Tim, we got a disease going around the league and around Canada, the United States, the Europe, the whole world. And what do they call it?
Well, COVID-19, but I think everybody calls it the coronavirus.
Imagine that you have a beer and it's called Corona. Now, why do they call it? Where do they come up with Corona?
Well, I think what happened, like Corona is part of the sun, and I think they said that the virus looks like a little sun.
Really?
Yeah, and that's what, like, you see the pictures of it. It's round and it's got
the
little things
pictures
going out, so there's sun. But
So there's people actually out there that won't drink Corona beer because they get the association.
They want it's pretty tough to say I want a Corona,
yeah,
but I mean it's a pretty good beer. We've had it, and
you put the lime in it; it's delicious.
Yeah. Well, it's all over now. Like my daughter, your granddaughter, she's in Spain right now, and she's in lockdown. So she's so everything seems to be shut down and everything like that. And you feel sorry for the players and the fans and stuff like that. But we had kind of had this experience with the NHL lockout back in it was '94 when we opened the bar in Etobicoke.
Right.
And you look at all the bars and the people in the parking attendants and all the restaurants around all the arenas, like they're all...
The trickle-down effect is so sad because it's the people that, minimum wage people like that really suffer.
the players are okay. They're getting paid. I guess some of the players are giving some of the money.
Yeah, they said that some of the NHL, well, the one basketball player, that Zion Williams, he gave money, and then in the NHL, Bobrovsky, he having a tough time stopping pucks in Florida, but he seems like a good guy.
Glad he given some of it. He deserves to give some of it back.
Yeah, so I think he said he gave $100,000, and then the other players chipped in $100,000, and then the owner said whatever left over he'll top up.
Now we seem to be following the NHL. We seem to be following the basketball. Why?
Well, it looked like, I guess the whole thing started, they were still debating whether to go back, and then there was that basketball game where they basically told the fans to go home. It was a full arena. And then I was listening to some interviews with Gary Bettman, and in so many words, he said, you can't do that. He says it didn't look good. It looked amateurish, and, there's 16,000 people, and they say go home, and the people are in panic. They don't know should they go home or somebody disease.
I think one of the players had it then.
Yeah, one of the Utah Jazz guys got it, and they were afraid that the other players were going to get it, and then maybe some of the off ice officials and all that. So, but you kind of had something not to this extent back when you started coaching Boston. It
was it's a funny thing. It's the same thing as get the flu. Once you get one guy gets the flu in the National Hockey League on a team, the rest of the teams get it, and everybody, the players think it comes from the kids. The kids get it, at school and that, and they bring it to the rink. And I used to say, if you got the flu, stay home. I didn't. A few guys that come, I didn't want to say that to. They'd stay home anyhow. But yeah, we had the flu, but then a thing came out called a gunk. Isn't that awful word? The gunk. I don't know whoever thought of it, but
it looked like the gunk.
Yeah, it was an awful.
It was almost like a skin rash.
It was deep skin rash. There was one guy, Tom Reed, I think his name was, and he got it worse than anybody, or he reacted worse than anybody, and it cost him his career. I mean, he couldn't sleep. They figured it came from the leather and from I think it was they used to throw all the underwear in together. And that's what I think with that.
Do you remember you were telling me about it, that you guys had tried everything to cure the skin rash on the players? And I brought home I worked for a veterinarian, and I brought an ointment home, and I said, this works for everything. Do you remember that?
No, I don't.
And I said, well, what is it? Well, it's a skin rash, and they've tried every type of ointment on it. And I said, well, we here at the vet clinic, we use this this ointment called Panalog, and all the people that are vets out there will know.
Oh, yeah.
And I said, give it a try. It's an all-round type of antibiotic.
Did it work?
It worked. And you came home and said it works. And I had to go to the veterinarian and order it by the caseload of Panalog. And that was pretty funny. It was the vet stuff that cured it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, it was just to...
I don't think it cured it.
It cleaned up the rash.
Yeah. And it wasn't just like Boston. It was going through the whole league.
The whole team. Well, Tom Reed, I think he played for Mini.
Yeah, I went through the whole league. And you know, one of the things what I remember, they were trying to figure out what it was. They changed. They thought they didn't know if it was the detergent that they were using.
Yeah.
They didn't know if it was if there was something in the equipment that maybe the
Awful looking
manufacturers
stuff.
put in. And then the one thing that they were thinking was that every player worked on a stick back then, and they were wood, and then all the wood had fiberglass over the blades. And they were wondering if the guys, when they were shaving the stick, that the fiberglass, like little particles, were getting into the underwear. And then when the players would sweat, the fiberglass would get in there into the pores, and then they would get infected.
Personally, I think that it was the leather. Somehow it got into the leather. It's not like now. If you see the guys coming off the ice, they take their gloves and get it dried out and everything like that. They used to use wet gloves all the time, and shoulder pads were always wet. I don't know. I thought it was the leather somehow.
Yeah, but when Brad Park got traded to Boston, he had it.
Yeah.
He was just getting on the end of it. They were giving them really heavy doses of antibiotics and steroids, prednisone.
Holy smokes!
And that's why he's,
Jilly got it.
Jilly got it.
Our goalie.
But that's Brad Park. That's why he said he was heavy when he came to Boston, because he was on the prednisone, and prednisone makes you,
I remember when Brad come. Holy smokes! He had a bad knee, and I said to myself, "No wonder he's got a bad knee, so heavy." And they call him the Pillsbury Doughboy. Some of you people remember. He used to poke the Pillsbury Doughboy and he'd go hee like that there, and he really did look like the Pillsbury Doughboy. And I said to him, "Don't worry, we'll take care of that." And I remember we were in the airport one day. He had on a suit, and he emphasizes, he must have lost about 20, 25 pounds. And he's, "Look what you've done to me, Grapes. Look what you've done to me." But he really played terrific, boy. He was terrific after that. But he did have it. Gilbert had it, and somebody else had it. But those two guys had it real bad.
And then it just kind of disappeared.
Yeah, Tom Reed, like I said, he was a defenseman, a real good stay-at-home defenseman. Boy, he'd be worth a lot of dough now. And what happened, that he got it so bad, and then he tried to make a comeback, and as soon as he put on equipment, it came back, and it was brutal. And he couldn't sleep at night, and he'd have to sit in the chair and sleep. It was awful. And as soon as he stopped playing, it cost him his career.
Yeah. Well, I could say, just getting back to the restaurants, we know how hard it is. When we opened the Etobicoke Don Cherry's Grapevine in 1994, there was the lockout.
Yeah.
And boy, it was just, we had to get a hypnotist in on the weekends. Remember that?
Well, you know what? You rise to the occasion, and you're not so then dependent on sports, because we really had to scramble. And I'll tell you, you know what? What
You're
do they
scrambling
say?
now.
Yeah. Well, separates the wheat from the chaff when you got to work for it.
Yeah, it teaches you how to run a tight restaurant.
It certainly does.
But the people that get affected, the first thing we did was cut the waitresses in half and just said, "Look, we're going to have to let you go because there's going to be no shifts for you," and with the cooks and everything. And then you think about, all the people that deliver the beer, and then deliver the chicken wings and the napkins and the pop guys, and it's just,
there's nothing you can do about it. And I think my personal feeling, I think it'll be over in about 3 weeks. And I don't know why 3 weeks, but I think it'll be over in 3 weeks.
Yeah. And ironically, this was going to be the first week of a new sponsor that we had called My Bookie. It's an online betting service. And they sent a note saying, "Well, Tim, seeing that there's no sports to bet on, maybe we'll wait and pick it up a little bit later."
But you can sort of see their point.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of other things that you could bet on. Let's see, the weather, or no? I don't
They have everything too. You can bet on anything but sports.
Just about anything. Even they had the U.S. president. You could bet on that already, and all that. But it was interesting. They had the Bruins. You could bet on the Stanley. You can bet individual games and props and prop bets and everything like that, but they also you bet on the Stanley Cup, and they had the Bruins favored 5-1 to win the Stanley Cup. And then what the second one was, which is kind of a surprise at the time, was Vegas. Vegas was 6-1, so they were predicting a Las Vegas finals.
That sounds pretty good.
Things sure have changed since when everyone had to have their own private bookie, or how that used to work, eh?
Yeah, because
How progressive.
Well, just because back in 1994, there was no online betting or anything like that, and you couldn't even really watch. And let's face it, football.
Yeah, all sports do it now. Eh?
All sport, yeah, and it's just everything. You can bet soccer, CFL, and everything on it. And we used to have a back in '94, like you could usually watch one football game at 1:00, which usually was the Buffalo Bills in Toronto here, and then a 4:00 game, and that was it. But we had the big satellites. Remember, we got the big
Yes.
satellites, and we could watch as many 4 games. So a lot of the gamblers and the bookies would come in and watch. And
We get into that restaurant alive, hey?
Yeah.
That is a tough business. You have to be pretty sharp when you're to be.
you know what killed us was when the no smoking came in.
Well, that's the same thing as Legion. The Legion, I talked to Legionnaires, and they sent cigarettes over to teach us to smoke overseas. And then when we come back, we smoke. And they wouldn't even let one in Kingston. They wouldn't even let them smoke on the patio. On the patio, and there was a bus idling beside it. I mean, and that really killed the.
But what was unfair about that smoking law was down the street. It was a different the line of between Toronto and Etobicoke, and that the other bar was just down far enough closer to Toronto they could smoke.
Yeah.
And there was 1 block difference. You go west of us, and you couldn't smoke.
Yep.
So then everyone went down there because let's face it, people like to smoke in bars, and that really killed us.
You know, I remember somehow or other I was in the back and smoking. Imagine the smoking. They had half smoking or quarter smoking in the back in the planes. No, I'm not kidding. And then they had it that when you land, and then they had no smoking. But when you land, you could smoke. You know when you land. And I'm telling you, they as soon as the plane touched the ground, they had the cigarettes out. I almost died. And I know a lot of people don't remember, but at one time they had smoking on the planes.
Yeah. Well, another kind of sad thing happened for you this week, Dad.
Yes.
Your beloved car is.
Well, it was a funny thing is I have a black 1983 Mark VI, which I love. By the way, I have a same one. I love them so much. The cars in 1980 and
What year was it?
1983
'83.
and
Lincoln Mark what?
Mark VI.
Mark VI.
Mark VI.
2-door though.
Two-door hardtop. It was a beautiful car. So I'm out and I'm over at the mechanics, and the door won't close. And I thought it was a lock, eh? And Matt's over there, and he says, "I'm sorry, not." And he said, and the hinge was going. Well, the hinge had gone, and I remember I drove, and I was driving over there with the door, and they're big doors, and when I swerved to the right, it'd go open. Oh my! So anyhow. And then the other door I know it was going too, and but it was a beautiful car, running couldn't believe how it run. And I said, I'm going to give it to Kidney Foundation.
Oh yes, because the Kidney Foundation has a kidney car program.
Yeah, I have already given one.
Yes, that's
I kind of regretted that one though. That was black cherry. Remember that?
It was big beautiful truck. It was burgundy inside and out. It was gorgeous. But the Kidney Foundation, it was a good thing. I know you love that car, and you gave it up for the Kidney Foundation.
Yeah, I shouldn't have given it up. It was too nice. I saw it being told away. What have I done?
Yeah, you saw it.
I died. This one I parked.
You left it out there, then you left. And
I left the keys.
The guy
I see him driving away, and I'd stop him. But I remember when that black cherry. That was a great color too. And the inside, what was I thinking? Anyhow, Matt said, I'll restore the whole thing. I said, well, look at Matt. I don't want it sitting outside rusting here. And if you're gonna get it, he says, I'll take care of it. So I fixed it up, cleaned it up. Remember? Cleaned things up.
Oh, we always have to clean things up before we give it to someone. Not selling it, just when you give someone to something.
Yeah,
and
you
that
remember
was
the bike?
The bike. I was a Schwinn bike when I was 5 or 6 years old, and you and Mom went at it pretty good because I had to give up my beautiful Schwinn bike.
Well, you didn't have to. You were getting another one.
I was getting another one, and I
one.
was giving one to another person, and you made me go out and clean it. And I said, why do I have to clean it if I'm giving it away? And you said, because this is the way things are done. And Mom sort of agreed with me.
Yeah.
And I remember you and Mom really went at it.
Well, you were crying the whole time you were cleaning the bike. And I stood there and I said, don't want to see a thing on it.
I did
and you
clean the chrome.
Why? I remember you saying, if I'm giving it away, why do I have to clean it?
Right.
I said, that's the way it's done.
So
anyhow, I cleaned up this black car, and it looked like, it absolutely looked gorgeous. I mean, and I'm thinking, what am I doing?
But That car had a pretty special lineage. So tell us when you first got it, the color. And,
Gee,
and
you sound like McLean lineage.
Lineage,
Yeah.
yes.
That's history, I guess.
History, yes. Somebody who owned it before you. So tell us when you got it, what it looked like, and then who you found out owned it.
Well, when I bought it, it had a white top, the vinyl was white, and the body was blue inside. And I thought, there's something wrong here because...
So can I ask you where you bought it from? Like, who did you buy it off a lot or?
No, I bought it off a person.
Oh, okay.
And I said, there's something wrong here. I said, because all of them all come through with the vinyl is always the same color as the car. And she said, this is a special car. And I don't know, a special car. Yeah.
They're all special.
Yeah, they're all special. And it was Harold Ballard's car.
No.
Yeah, it was. And I used to see it. I didn't know I was going to buy it at the time. But he had it, and I know the chauffeur, Dan McDonald.
Yep.
I knew him. And I remember he used to have it parked in the Toronto Maple Leaf Gardens, and he had tiger cats. He used to be a tiger cat guy.
Oh, yes.
And we used to, I see it. I used to think, what a sharp car. Little did I know, but I didn't like the blue, so I painted the whole thing black.
Well, hopefully Matt will kind of restore it back to the way it was with
Well,
Ballard.
he will.
And put the tiger cat on. Somebody Toronto Maple Leaf fan would love the car that was owned by Ballard.
I don't know if he's going to do it or not. I got to bring him some more.
So I couldn't see you. What were you going to? If Matt hadn't taken it, what were you going to do? Like, I can't see you selling it. Were you thinking of the Kidney
No, I
Foundation?
was going to have it. That one I was going to go because I couldn't. The door was falling
You're
off.
going to take it to and crunch it.
No, yeah, I'm going to give it to the Kidney Foundation.
Oh, you were? Yeah. What? That's good. And because you're very sentimental about your cars. I remember you had a beautiful maroon Pontiac that you had a story that you were bringing to the.
I was going to Boston Bruins, and I had a 1964 Pontiac Parisienne. Boy, it was beautiful. Burgundy outside, black inside. It was beautiful. So it was 64, and I was going. It was 74. I was 10 years old. I wasn't going to bring it to the Boston, and it was just too much to bring it to Boston.
Well, then also someone said the floorboards were going, and you were mom got all panicky too about the floorboards.
Well, I had to get rid of it because the floorboards were going on it, but it was. I didn't have rust check back in those days. But,
that's right.
And the floorboards were going. I forgot about that.
Yeah, and then go ahead.
When the floor goes, so she saw that.
Once Mom heard that was it. It had to go. The floorboards are going. You can't reinforce them. It's out.
So I had a friend. I didn't know I have a Kidney Foundation then. I had a friend, and he was going to let me take it, and he was going to burn it. We were going to burn it.
Burn it.
Because I was not getting somebody to get that car. And I remember you kids wouldn't have ice creams cones in the back, or you wouldn't put your feet on it. It was not going to wreck that car. So Lynn Zimmerman and Bob Kelly, Battleship Kelly, they restored old cars, and
they were a player. Lynn was the goalie.
Yeah, and I knew Bob Kelly was going to the National Hockey League. I knew Lynn wasn't. So I give it to Lynn, and by God, he kept it. He kept it for 20 years, 25 years.
And you gave it to him.
Oh, I give it to him, yeah. And so I fall in love with my cars.
So do you remember? Remember, there was Fort Eerie. I'll never forget it. Fort Eerie. We're opening up a bar there, and Lynn Zimmerman comes, and guess what he drives to see the. And I'm at the opening, and he goes, "Cindy, Lynn Zimmerman, the goalie from Rochester, are so happy to see him." And he goes, "Guess what I have out front?" And I go, "No."
Yeah.
He goes, "I brought the car for your dad to see. I've kept it through all these years."
Yeah.
And I think the first question you asked was, you asked was, you restored it. Did you ever restore the floorboards? He goes, "Funny, Don, that's one part I never had to replace." And then
because you couldn't see him.
You were angry.
Yeah, I got rid of it. But that was a beautiful car too. I fall in love with my cars. I really do.
Well, Cindy, we were talking about Ballard for a minute. You used to go down to the Maple Leaf Gardens with your groom-mobile.
That's right. I had Canada's first mobile dog grooming service, and I got a call from the garden saying, Mr. Ballard wants Puck. Puck was his dog, Bouvier de Flanders.
Oh, big one, yeah.
Big dog, really. Oh, I love Bouviers. But he was blonde. It was very unique.
You don't see that too often.
No, blonde Bouvier. It was something. So I go down in I remember how old it was, like a 73 old Ford fan.
Bertie, the only thing he kept going was Bertie.
Oh
our
man,
mechanic.
it was a sight to see. So I pull up to the Toronto Maple Leaf Gardens, and the ushers and the people there look at me like, so what are you doing with this van? And they said, get lost, lady. And I said, I'm here to groom Puck. Yeah. Well, I said the magic words, and the Red Sea opened for me. Yeah. And I went in, and there was Puck, and I groomed him. And all of a sudden, though, I was all by myself in the Toronto, inside the gardens, and well, who's going to pay me? Surely to goodness that they don't think I'm going to do it free because it's Ballard's dog.
He expected it.
Did he? You think he expected it free because it was his dog?
Yep.
Well, that isn't the way I work. And so I went through the gardens, and I finally got in the office, and Yolanda was there and all this. And
Yolanda was his wife, eh? Or
yeah, something. And pay her $80. So
imagine $80 back in those days.
$80 I charged them. And
Holy
so,
smokes.
yeah.
What would they charge now for?
Oh my goodness, it would probably a mobile. Double and a half, probably. You're looking at $200-300. I don't know. I would charge.
Smokes.
I wasn't cheap,
I guess not.
I know. So I get the check, and it's a Toronto Maple Leaf Gardens check. And that's pretty cool to see, right? So I remember I come home to you. I said, look at this, Dad. A Toronto Maple Leaf Gardens check.
For doing his dog.
And what did you say?
Yeah, you told me before. I forgot what I said.
Yeah, you said, that is exactly why he ended up going to jail down in Kingston, was because he's writing off personal things against the gardens.
Yeah, and that's exactly what happened. And him, and I remember one of the very first times I was on television was him and Dick Bettles. Remember Dick Bettles?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, with the hat?
CHCH, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I first came from Colorado, I used to turn in Channel 11, and they had Dick Bettles on. They used to give him 15, 20 minutes, and he'd give his opinion on it. And I never missed him. It was the thing to do at 11 o'clock. And he'd have his opinion on, and he'd touch his hat. I forget, would he be a sport or somebody? I forget. What would he used to say at the end? I forget what he said.
I forget, yeah.
Anyhow, be a
sign
sport.
off line. I forget what it was.
Yeah, it was a good one.
That was a good one. Anyhow, I'll find out. But anyhow, he used to get, and then somebody at Channel 11, some wise guy, give him the 5 minutes, and that was the end of him. But I remember I went on TV with him, and I did an interview with him and Ballard, Harold, Mr. Ballard. He liked me, by the way.
Yeah, I know he did.
Yeah, he did, and I think he liked me because nobody else liked me. Sounds reasonable.
You were sort of in his same genre of people not liking you.
I remember one time I didn't know this till after. They were going to fire me many times, as you know, at the Hockey Night in Canada. And he says, you fire him, you don't come in the building. That was pretty good.
Yeah, because in those days, the CBC cameras and the whole studio was in the gardens.
Yeah.
And he said, hey, Don doesn't come back. Get your stuff out of the...
I didn't know that.
Well, I remember what Ralph was saying was that...
Ralph Mellenby
was executive producer of Hockey Night in Canada at the time. You said something about Edmonton. So Edmonton said, Don Cherry can't come and do the building. And then you said something about Calgary and Vancouver. So you're right. So... Ralph was talking to Mr. Ballard, and he told him this, and Ballard laughed, and he says, well, tell Don he can be in our rink anytime, so don't worry about it.
I was pretty careful with the Leafs, and they were a lousy club back then.
Yeah.
They did.
Well, remember the time, was it Don Wallace that Ballard called? He got mad or something? Remember you said you said something, and you thought that, and they said, it's Don Wallace.
I thought it was done there. And Don went, and you're always getting in trouble. You're always saying something like this. And Ballard was in his box there. Not his box. It was the
little bunker.
It was they called it the bunker.
Yeah, and him and King Clancy.
Yeah, that's right.
Mr. Clancy. And he phoned him once. There you are. He's going, no, we'll never be kicked out of there. And the whole Hockey Night in Canada was upset because Ballard phoned, couldn't get through. So he kept phoning through, and he wouldn't answer. See, he won't answer my call. So I guess I'd done it this time. And sure enough, and he said, I said, did you get your call? And yeah, I did. And he says, well, what did he want? He said, well, never mind. I said, what do you want? He says, Wendell Clark's grandmother in the stands. Can you get a picture of her?
But he does that. Mr. Ballard takes a lot of hits for a lot of things, but he was a very charitable person. He's one of those people that you didn't know everything that he did for charity. He was very
well. He was embarrassed that if you found out about it.
That's right.
And I remember when I get fired in Boston, or no, I didn't get fired in Boston. Someday I'll talk about that. That he asked me, and it's a long story, but and I must go into it. That he offered me a year more in my contract. I'd be close to my mother, and more money than going. But I shook hands with Ray Miron, which was stupid.
And your agent at the time was Al Eagleson. He said, "Hey, no contract." He says, "You can come to Toronto."
He said, "What are you nuts?"
Yeah.
He said, "It's not the Boy Scouts."
This is big time. He says, "What do you think this is? This honor stuff?" I shook hands. He says, "Ray Miron will stab you in the back." I said, "Doesn't matter." And I lived by that.
So you were that close to coaching the Toronto Maple Leafs.
But the Lord works in mysterious ways as wonders to behold. That I would have gotten into an argument with Ballard. They had a good
eventually.
club boy. They were only about 2 players away from winning the Stanley Cup. And then I think he brought in Punch, and Punch got rid of, going to get rid of everybody. And we ended up with Lanny. But they were only about 2 or 3 players away. They had a pretty good club. They had a good goaltender, Paul Matier. They had good defense, Salming, and they had Sittler, McDonald.
That line, Sittler, McDonald, and Errol Thompson.
Holy smokes. They were terrific. And if I had come, I could have kept that team together, but I would have got an argument. Then I wouldn't have been allowed in Toronto Maple Leaf Gardens, and Harold Ballard
would have banned you from going on TV in the Gardens.
So the Lord works in mysterious ways.
Yeah.
Now, let me just tell you a story about Harold and I. So it was Harold, and it was Dick Bettles, and I remember we had the meeting. It was a tough meeting. I was a little nervous. I remember halfway through this thing, he says, "That's a fake rose you got. What else about you is fake?" And I almost fainted. Like I didn't know what to say. I stumbled, but I didn't know what to say. But 3 or 4 years later, I'm on a show, and by now I'm pretty well. I know.
It's very seasoned now.
Seasoned. Yeah, I guess that's the word. So one of the calls coming in said, "What do you do with your old clothes?" And I says, "I give them to Dick Bettles." That was it. He was a good guy, and
Dick Bettles was far ahead of his time.
Yes, he was. That's true. He was far ahead.
And And some clever guy at CHCH Channel 11 cut him back to 5 minutes, and that was
it. He was never really the same.
Never was the same. But when he had the 20 minutes, boy, he'd give his opinion. He was great.